Between Midnight and Dawn from 1950 was a police crime drama starring Mark Stevens, Edmond O'Brien, and Gale Storm. I've been sort of on a Mantan Moreland kick lately, and I need to get back into some other films that are a little bit different. And I haven't seen anything with Edmond O'Brien for a while, so I thought I'd check this one out, and it was really good. And I'm surprised that this one is not as well known as it should be. But I'll give it a review, give an overview of the film, and then offer some closing thoughts about this excellent movie.
Knock off and get a cup of coffee, huh, Dan?
How about covering the territory for a while, just out of curiosity?
Once, Daniel, I'd like to see you relax a little on duty.
I have to set a good example for you, Junior. Don't forget, I'm trying to make a policeman out of you someday.
Give me a flash when you figure I've made it, will you?
Well, the film opens up, we have kind of a flyover of an unnamed city, along with a voiceover, talking about how first responders are there on the scene to respond to the crime, and then we see this police dispatch center of 1950, which is actually pretty cool to see how they would answer calls and send out these messages written out on paper, crazy stuff, but it's really cool. I love that window into the past, and soon we meet the stars of the film. We have two police officers, Rocky Barnes, played by Mark Stevens, and Dan Purvis, played by Edmond O'Brien. They're two cops on a night patrol in the city. And right off, we see that they're partners that are very different from one another. Rocky is more of the younger, hopeful optimist, and Dan is a little more jaded and cynical. He's been in this role for a while. Now, later in the film, we'll learn that they were actually buddies during the war, and now they serve together on the police force. So they're on this patrol, and they have some friendly banter going along with each other. Things like Rocky, who's convinced that the woman who's doing the dispatch must be gorgeous based on her voice. Stuff like that. So we establish, they're good friends, and they work together here. Well, the officers are on patrol, and they go to investigate a garage heist. There's a robbery taking place. They arrest a couple guys, as well as their teenage female accomplices. One of the girls is all worked up and upset about, I don't want to go to jail. And, as mentioned, Rocky seems to be the more sympathetic one. But Dan is all, in another year, she'll be packing a shiv, ready to stick it into someone's gut if she has to. Well, okay, we kind of see the difference of the two characters here. So next, they go to visit an Italian restaurant that appears to have been attacked with a stink bomb. There's a broken window and a bunch of bystanders standing around. Now, Dan suspects this is the work of a gangster thug named Quist, who did this because the people haven't paid off their protection fees to a big gangster guy named Richie Garris. So they head to the nightclub, the Starlight Club that's owned by Garris, in order to pick up this Quist character. And it's here that they have a brief encounter with the crime boss, Garris, who's played by Donald Buca.
Next time the cops got business in my place, tell them don't send no penny ante flatfoots.
We're sorry, Mr. Garris. We didn't know how important you are.
Stay away from me, messenger boys. I'm giving you one warning. Keep your nose out of my business.
So back at the station, they have brought the restaurant owner to identify this character Quist, actor Philip Van Zandt. But the owner refuses to identify him, clearly scared and intimidated by what could happen. So the lieutenant is at the station. He's played by actor Anthony Ross. Caught him recently as the deputy in the movie The Gunfighter with Gregory Peck. It was a great movie. Anyhow, this lieutenant breaks the news that Quist can't be held, and in fact, his lawyer soon arrives, so they have to let him go. Now, the next day, the pair, they're out on patrol, and they stop to break up a fight of some kids. They're just kind of tussling, and hey, it's Billy Gray. I caught him recently in the movie Father is a Bachelor. And he's here fighting. What would William Holden say? Well, Rocky breaks up the fight, and they bring Billy back home again. Now, back at the station, they're finally able to figure out who has this lovely dispatch voice. It's the character Kate, who's played by actress Gale Storm. And Rocky tries to ask her out for dinner with them, and after an initial failed attempt, she agrees. So they go out to eat, but it's actually at the nightclub of this Garris character, the crime guy. And they're there, having some drinks and making some small talk. Garris's girlfriend, Terry Romaine, is there. She's played by gorgeous actress Gail Robbins, and she's singing for the club. She'll be a little more important a little later in the film. So the guys are there. They're talking together with Kate, but you can see that Dan is really there to kind of scope things out. And soon enough, they see that this character, Leo Cusick, shows up. He's played by actor Roland Winters. I caught him recently in the film Convicted with Glenn Ford, but he's better known as an actor for his role as Charlie Chan. So he's there to meet with these other criminal characters. So Dan thinks this is a big deal, so he leaves to go call this in. Meanwhile, Rocky goes dancing with Kate. So Cusick goes in the back room to talk with Garris, basically telling him that he's the big guy and he'd like to take over his operation. You know, crime lord talk. But Garris isn't having it. And the deal doesn't go through. Cusick leaves. Now Garris realizes that he's got these two cops here, and he goes to talk to them. Now Dan makes a remark about showing the young lady how things under the rocks live, you know, stuff like that. And you can see these characters just really hate one another right off the bat. But we know this isn't over. So the guys bring Kate back home, and while she's there, she talks to her mother, and hey, it's Madge Blake. Remember, Aunt Harriet from the old Batman series. That's pretty cool. And Kate here confesses to her mother that she doesn't want to get involved with any police guy romantically because we learn her father was a cop who had died in the line of duty. But I don't know, we kind of tell from her mom's face, maybe she thinks different. We'll see what happens. So the next day, the police officers have gathered for a morning debriefing, at which this lieutenant mentions that the character Cusick is moving into town and to be aware of what's going on. And again, actor Anthony Ross as the lieutenant in this film was really fantastic. You know, as far as the no-nonsense commander running the show, you can see that his character could very easily have been the inspiration for other hard-edged lieutenants in future police programs. I'll talk about that a little more at the end of the review. Anyhow, Kate is at home with her mother, and we find out that there are some new renters who will be staying in one of their rooms, you know, to kind of help them with their financial struggles. And wouldn't you know it, it's Rocky and Dan. Mom looks kind of cheeky about this decision. And I mean, look, I thought this part of the film veered just a little bit into the silly direction, but it's okay. Now, Kate, of course, is not too pleased with this decision, but her mom seems okay with the weird arrangement, you know, having a couple cops rent the room. And they're next door. They're making a bunch of noise, like hammering things and singing, and Kate goes to tell them off. Now, it's here that Rocky and Dan share with her some of their background, how they were buddies in the war and their friendship goes way back. And Mom shows up with, you know, some sandwiches and some coffee, and all seems to be pretty well so far. And look, for a crime film, I'm cool with that little window of levity and calm. You know, we kind of bring a little bright spot into an otherwise dark and shadowy film. Well, soon we cut back over to the crime boss, Garris, who is out with some of his goons outside of a place where this character Cusick is. And as Cusick steps out, they gun him down. Soon enough, the police are dispatched, and Rocky and Dan are included in that group, and they are in pursuit of Garris's car. Now, Kate hears on the radio as it's all being announced, and she looks alarmed. The chase is very exciting and takes place around this nameless city. There's some gunfire exchanged until finally the cops stop them. They get Garris out of his car, and he's pleading with them to buy him off, you know, $10,000 each. But they haul him away. "I'll get both of you dirty flatfoots," he says. So we know this isn't over yet. The lieutenant and Kate arrive at the scene, and Kate, relieved that Barnes is okay, gives him some sugar, much to the visible disappointment of Purvis, who we can tell has kind of figured out he might be the third wheel of this relationship. Well, some time has passed, and Rocky has been going out with Kate, and they plan to get married after Garris's trial. Now, Rocky plans to go out on an evening out with Kate and invites Dan, but he knows what's going on. You know, "Wake up, Rocky. At a time like this, three's a crowd," he says. You know, stuff like that. Now we cut ahead to that court scene. Now, Garris is found guilty, but on the way out, he tells the police that, "I'll get ya." And sure enough, in lockup, you know, he's got his arm bandaged up from his early shootout. He deliberately smacks his bandaged arm into part of the bed in order to make it bleed so that he can call for the doctor. Now, while he's getting treated, some of Garris's men, from a distance, they open fire and break out the window, kill the guys in the room, and they give Garris a chance to escape out the window. So the police all gather, and the lieutenant lets them know that Garris is on the loose. He meets with Rocky and Dan privately and warns them to be on guard. So Rocky and Dan go out on patrol, but soon they're pursued by Garris, and yeah, He's a genuine creep in this film. Really a great actor. He drives past and opens fire on them and hits Rocky. Kind of grazes him with a headshot is what it looks like. So at the hospital, the doctors, they're doing their best, but it doesn't look good for Rocky. And Dan says his final words to his friend and Kate before doing the final nod. Now, I'll admit, this was a surprise for me. I'm watching a film like this, I'm thinking that Dan would be the one to take the fall. He's the older, jaded officer. But instead, it was the younger guy. So I thought this was an interesting twist in this film. So Dan and Kate, they're sitting at the club now, and they're watching singer Terry Romaine. And they're wondering if they can get her to break on where the location of Garris is. Nobody knows where he is. He's out in hiding somewhere. Now, Dan has had it, and he goes out to confront Terry and demands to know, where is Garris? And he gets pretty animated here and starts slapping her around. I mean, dude, take it easy. Yeah, his partner is dead, so now the mission to find Garris has become a personal one. So later we see this bunch of detectives have been scoping out Terry's place, basically to see if they can find Garris, who has gone into hiding at this point. And sure enough, Garris appears. He tries to sneak back in order to be with his sweetie, who he discovers is packing up her things to leave town. Well, the cops are called and they're going to move in. But Garris, he's a real creep. And when this young girl, Kathy, a neighbor kind of across the hall, comes in to visit with Terry, he demands that she goes along with them, kind of as a human shield. Now, Garris discovers the cops outside and things turn bad really fast. He grabs Kathy and just kind of holds her out the window, threatening to drop her. And the suspense of this scene is really fantastic. Now, Dan arrives. He has a daring scheme to go up on this window ledge and kind of climb along to try to save this girl. Will he make it? Can he save her? Can he stop this evil Garris character? Well, with only a few minutes left in the film, you're going to have to watch the exciting conclusion for yourself. But it's great, and it is worth watching. So some closing thoughts about Between Midnight and Dawn from 1950. It was produced by Columbia Pictures and directed by Gordon Douglas. It was an excellent police film with elements of drama, suspense, and comedy. One of the things I liked about this film is that it takes place in a purposely unnamed city, sort of like Hill Street Blues was. I mean, it looked like it probably could have been Los Angeles, but I like when they kind of keep you guessing with something like, where did this take place? Who knows? Could be any city, really. It's an excellent police film, and I can see how this might have been the inspiration for other police and crime shows like, Adam 12, Dragnet, or even Chips. And I'm surprised this film isn't as well known as it is, but there weren't as many reviews and a lot of trivia about the film, which is really a shame. Really enjoyed this film. There are some of the elements of the buddy cop device, particularly with the two main characters' dialogue, or when they're being silly and setting up the rental house. And yeah, it does have a little bit of the dead partner trope, when Dan gets a little more driven and emotional after the death of his partner. But for the most part, this was just pretty much a straightforward police story. And as mentioned earlier, I love seeing that older world of law enforcement, the roll call meetings, the type of things they would encounter on a routine call back in the late 40s, and even some of the ways that dispatch would receive calls and respond to them, using paper and pen. It's great. Now, my three fans who watch my reviews, I'm always a fan of Edmond O'Brien films, and this was no exception. He could be a detective, a crime boss, a man on the run, whatever. He's always great. And in my opinion, he always serves as that believable everyman character. And this role was no exception. I can't really relate to someone like, say, Cary Grant or Errol Flynn. They just seem like a completely different class of human being. But with Edmond O'Brien, he just seems like the everyman, No matter what the role is, he's someone you can believe in because he just seems real. So he's great in this film. Mark Stevens as well was excellent as that ill-fated police deputy. Haven't seen many of his films before, but really thought he was great here. And as I do in my reviews, I'll watch a film and I think, I might have to go check out another film that he was in. Now, my friend Florida Greg has recommended the film Street with No Name, and I think he's in that film with Richard Widmark. So who knows? That might be the next film. Stay tuned. Gale Storm was also very nice in this film as the sympathetic character Kate, and I liked how the film explored that theme of Kate's character, reluctant to get involved romantically with a police officer, as from her own experience of losing her father, That theme of losing a loved one was very strong with her in this film. Now, going into this, from early on, we can tell that yes, there's this love triangle, and knowing it's a crime drama, you can kind of figure that one of the two main guys has to die. That's sort of the anticipation early in the film. But again, I was kind of surprised that it was the younger character Rocky who dies and not the older, more experienced character Dan. Thought he would have been the one to die, but it was kind of an interesting take the way the film went. Donald Buca's character Garrus is genuinely evil in this film, and he is great. We established early in the film that he's pretty much the main goal of the movie, that they've got to get this guy and bring him down. And it becomes even more personal, obviously, for Dan after his partner dies. Garrus is just a nasty character who, when he's caught, vows revenge for his arrest, and he lives up to his word. And as I've said in earlier reviews, I think the best films are the one where you don't just have a clearly defined protagonist, but when you've got an equally well-defined and sinister antagonist to give the main hero or heroes a goal. And that's definitely the case with Buca's character here. It was excellent. I might have to track down more of his films too. Now, a final note is that while watching this film, I thought it was interesting as it's a little more unusually bloody for this time frame. I mean, this was 1950, Hays Code era still going on, but there are a couple scenes that stand out, such as Rocky's head injury, and there's another scene I won't spoil near the end of the film, where there are a couple visible gunshots with blood. And I just thought that was interesting. Normally this 40s, 50s era films, you don't see things like that, but kind of caught me off guard. But hey, compared to films of today, it's really nothing. So there's that. That's the film Between Midnight and Dawn from 1950. Really enjoyed this movie a lot. It was an excellent police crime film. It's worth checking out.